Mind to have what I call hashtag Insta outrage.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to see something and run to social media and comment on it. That's just not what I do. I need to know what the facts are. I need to know what happened. And the thing I found most interesting was the story wasn't completely out and people were already angry based on what they thought happened. And I apologize. There's a little bit of something going on. Right. Yeah. But
sign of the times.
Right, sign. I was like, you can't script those sound effects.
No,
right?
we could not.
Right. So people were immediately angry and all of this, but then I remember going back a few weeks ago when there was another source of anger and outrage where a woman and her family was shot on their way to get coffee by a white man in a car, and there was a manhunt for him, and then it turns out that it was actually two black people who did it, and it was this whole thing. And so then there was a lot of backtracking and backpedaling. But what happens in those moments and instances are the people who want to dismiss the narrative that in some cases is very true are able to say, see, there's another opportunity where you wanted to blame white people and white people didn't do anything. And then there's the whole, it's not guns in the hands of good people, it's guns in the hands of bad people. They should have never had. And it becomes about all of these things that have nothing to do with, in that case, a young black girl at the age of 7 is dead. Mm-hmm. And in this case, a young man in the prime of his career is lying in a hospital and could have very well died. We don't have those conversations. We have all the peripheral conversations based on, in some cases, limited or misinformation, because we all know when researching, when investigating a crime, police do not give out all the information. It limits their ability to actually find the culprits. So there's a couple of things that have happened since we spoke about this originally. One, there's been more information coming out. And two, there have been videos coming out online now that it's a hoax, that no one is going to say it's MAGA country. This sounds like a hoax and it's a narrative. And so it gets me to thinking, if we step away from Jussie for a moment, and I want to step away from him just to have this broader conversation, and I'll include us in this comment. What is it about people that when something like this happens, we have to take a side, and if we're angry, use it to spill that anger? What is it about people that if we feel as though we're marginalized, we have to take something like this and use it as an example to justify what we do? Like, why? I struggle with this because this entire time I'm not thinking as a black gay man that it could have happened to me. I'm thinking there is a young man going to get a Subway sandwich who was attacked. And that's the beginning and end of it for me. And I understand that, yes, it's an attack against a gay man. And yes, it's an attack against a black man and a Jewish man. And I get that. And if what's being said is true, it is hideous. But at what point do we say we are all human beings? And another human being, regardless of politics or any of this other foolishness, another human being was attacked while going to get a freaking footlong.
I think mine isn't about necessarily taking sides. For me, there is predator and victim. And that, I guess if I got a side, I'm going to take the side of the victim. I can't imagine a moral worldview in which I would not take the side of victim for human beings. When I'm talking about National Geographic and I'm watching the lioness take down the gazelle, and I might be rooting for the lioness. I'm talking about real human beings. So if there are sides, I'm going to always take the side of the victim. For me, I think a distinction is made in cases like this because while, so I recently heard, let me give you this example. I recently heard a story about someone that I know that I didn't know before, where they had been the victim of an attack, of a violent attack. And the circumstances are a little bit nuanced. And I immediately had empathy for them because I know them. I was upset that had happened to them. And I was really impressed by the way that they spoke about their intentional process in their recovery and moving forward. So it wasn't about let me find the person who's wrong here and take a side. It was about this horrible thing happened to people that I care about. When the young woman, Jasmine Barnes, I believe is her last name, was shot here in Houston, I didn't take a side. I wasn't more or less upset, and I was deeply upset by that. I wasn't more or less upset knowing it was a black person or a white person that did it. I was upset because a 7-year-old baby girl was killed. And I have a 7-year-old baby girl. And those people, again, were doing something that I have done a million times. That's get up in the morning, go about my life, and go get coffee. And their lives have been completely disrupted. That mother will never recover fully from that. You can't do that as a parent.
But I think you're doing something, and I just have to interject. You're doing something that I wish more people would do. But we have to be honest, a lot of people don't. And that is, you said as a mother, a 7-year-old is gone, and you're the mother of a 7-year-old. Your anger didn't dissipate when the crime photo came of the person who did it. You weren't less angry and go, oh, well, it was shot by a black person, right? My thing is, people are buying into divisive narratives, and they're using things like this to either further divide or perpetuate certain narratives. And I'm not discrediting the fact that some of those narratives exist, right? It's like stereotypes. Stereotypes exist because there's a modicum of truth to certain stereotypes. Granted, a lot of them are highly exaggerated, but there is a modicum of truth to that. So I understand why the narratives are in place. But when you hear shot by white person, shot by black person, shot by this, and you are angry and outraged, and then it comes out, oh, it wasn't by this person, and then your response is now silence, what are you doing?
No, I can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I know people have been dismissive of that particular metaphor, but I can do both. I can very well do both. So case in point, and to my point that I was making earlier today, or earlier at the start of the podcast, there was a shooting that happened here in Houston on Monday, and I heard about it while I was on the phone with my cousin driving home from picking my kid up and headed home. And she was like, oh my God, 5 officers shot in Houston? Wait, this is happening now. And so she puts the phone on. I can hear the news in the background. Southeast side, I think they said, or southwest side. They must have said southwest side. And I was like, not by me. And then I had a Facebook friend that lives in another country, and she reached out to me. She was like, I'm pretty sure you're okay, but I heard about this shooting that happened in Houston. You guys were the first people I thought of. Are you okay? And my response to her was, ashamedly as I am, I've reached a point where I'm kind of acclimated to that. I didn't even take the time to read the news story about it because that's par for the course. That's problematic. I get that. I shouldn't be here.
And can you just I think you need to stop right there for 1 second and say that again. That is problematic. That level of complacency is in direct conflict with your mental health. Like, that is so problematic.
And yet, I don't know another way to be. Because otherwise, I'm going to be in this house with my baby locked up and trying to build a doomsday bunker. I don't know where the middle ground is with that. I'm going to be honest. And if there are folks that are out there that are listening that do this sort of work and have some suggestions and feedback, please follow us and reach out to us and let me know so I can add that part to the narrative. But I'm talking about me personally and living in this context and time. I'm not sure how to manage it another way. However, there is another layer to this that I also think is important to take into account, that I do disagree with you to some extent to what I think you're saying. And let's move forward and say that after everything is said and done, let me say it this way. Let's work under the assumption that the things that were being said to him when he, Jussie Smollett, when he was attacked, let's work under the assumption that they are accurate. That he was actually said, "Aren't you that faggot empire nigger?" Let's say it's fact that they said, "This is MAGA country." Let's work from there. I tie that into these broader stories that I brought up that have happened over the past 12 to 18 months, because I need there to continue to be a conversation that when there is a crisis in this country of any sort, there are particularly vulnerable groups or marginalized groups that are differentially impacted, even in the midst of that crisis. And what I'm saying is, we live in a time in which gun violence has become commonplace, but it also serves as a very convenient backdrop for that sort of level of hate and vitriol to be aimed at specific people. And we can have both conversations without being completely dismissive of our overall humanity. What I'm saying is, he might not have been attacked. Let's working from the assumption that the things that were allegedly yelled are actually true, that he might not have been attacked if those things were not true. And because of that, that means he was differently victimized. And that is important to me.
Okay. And I hear that. So here's where I am. As you said that you have your degree of complacency when it came down to that shooting. I'm over this conversation, this type of conversation, because here's what I see in my 40 plus years of living. The same conversation that happens over and over and over with different examples each time. Insert person oppressed here, insert oppressor there. And nothing happens. There's no law, no rules, nothing. Nothing happens.
So there is, so I disagree. There are laws. That's why the conversation has been, this appears to be a hate crime. Right? And that's, again, why I do think that there's a special case, right? So the FBI defines a hate crime as a criminal offense against a person or property motivated in whole or in part based on the offender's bias against the race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, or gender identity.
But here's what I know to be true. There have been hate crimes that have happened here in New York City, but because the word fag was never used, it could not be tried as a hate crime. There is a very specific legal precedent that must be met in order to try it for that. And so I say this, when I say nothing is happening, I'm all about, if you got weeds in your garden, why are you cutting the top of the weeds? Get to the root. Why are we dealing with this when it's criminalized? Why aren't we looking at the education? What is it? Why aren't we looking at the social messages? What is driving people to get out of their house? Because if a person is out getting a Subway sandwich at 2:00 in the morning, what are these other people doing at 2:00 in the morning in Chicago, which, by the way, was about to get hit with temperatures that were going down to like negative, wind chill of negative. So what are you doing out at 2:00 in the morning that leads you to even identify this person getting a sandwich and then attacking them? So that's the whole thing. That is, for me, is not a conversation of let's criminalize post facto. It's a conversation of, what brought this person to that point? What messages is this person receiving? I find our conversations as a nation tend to be about, this is the